Chapter 461. Inshuo raised his hand, and a black long whip, like a spiritual snake, shot out, coiling with a flickering, eerie glow and carrying a cold, ominous aura. Aiming directly at the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast, Xing Wenyao also activated his green wooden ruler artifact. The ruler glowed with green light as a strong and powerful vine quickly grew out. Aiming straight for the cauldron in the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast's mouth, Jing Wuming moved his mind, and a massive hand illusion, about 10 feet tall, appeared in the air. The giant hand turned into claws. Reaching for the cauldron, Xing Gaohan controlled the fire phoenix, which dove downward with its sharp claws extended, also targeting the cauldron. The four of them almost attacked simultaneously. Xing Wenyao, Xing Gaohan, and Jing Wuming all targeted the cauldron. Inshuo, however, was aiming at the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast's corpse, or more specifically, at the soul within the corpse. The four attacks came from four different directions, almost sealing off all of the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast's escape routes. It seemed as though the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast was already trapped in an inescapable situation. Suddenly, it swung its head, and the cauldron flew out of its mouth, heading straight for the fire phoenix. The vine and giant hand followed, shifting their positions to target the cauldron as well. With the cauldron now in front of it, the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast had a clear path and no more obstacles. It leapt forward with all its strength, dodging the long whip that came at it. Wenyao, help me block Jing Wuming's giant hand. Xing Gaohan urgently shouted. Xing Wenyao's eyes flashed with displeasure, but his expression remained calm. Without showing it, the vine twisted in the air, striking out at the giant hand descending from the sky. The giant hand illusion was somewhat weak in comparison, and the vine was swept aside, but it still reduced the giant hand's speed. Xing Gaohan's face lit up with joy. With Jing Wuming obstructed by Xing Wenyao, the cauldron was practically in his grasp. The fire phoenix's claws slightly curved, and it was about to seize the cauldron. Boom! Suddenly, a muffled sound came from within the cauldron. Then, the cauldron's lid was forcefully lifted by some tremendous power, hurtling straight toward the fire phoenix. The lid's force was so great that it struck the fire phoenix, sending it stumbling back several feet. As the lid flew off, the cauldron itself was also pushed in the opposite direction, rapidly flying away. At that moment, 3 items were suddenly ejected from the cauldron: a blood-colored token and 2 dark red pills. The 3 items flew toward the direction of the vine and the giant hand. The vine quickly extended, skillfully wrapping around one of the pills. The giant hand illusion gently grabbed the other pill. The blood-colored token, however, fell unclaimed, plummeting to the ground. Xing Gaohan, having failed to obtain the pill, had a frosty expression. He urged the fire phoenix to strike at the giant hand. Jing Wuming, seeing that his goal had been reached, no longer hesitated. He used his spiritual power to pull the giant hand illusion and turned to flee. At the same time, Inshuo's long whip artifact finally caught up with the fleeing Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast, lashing around one of its hind legs. The Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast kicked its leg violently, trying to break free from the whip's hold. Each kick carried the sound of thunder. With immense force, however, not only did it fail to break free, but the long whip continued to extend, wrapping around its body. Suddenly, 2 large figures burst through the ghost mist ahead of the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast. It was Yuan Hao, and Fengming activated his Qingming Wind, transforming it into a massive black-green wind blade. Slashing at the long whip, Yuan Hao, using the Xianyin Heavy Water, summoned it toward the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast, attempting to trap it. At that moment, the entire secret realm began to shift. The blood-colored light pillar that had risen from the 9 stone pillars suddenly began to expand, growing at an astonishing speed, spreading out instantly in the blink of an eye. The blood-colored light pillar enveloped every corner of the secret realm. Even inside the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast, everyone within the secret realm froze in place. Even the nascent soul cultivators and the 2 4th-stage great demons could not escape the effect. Everyone felt a powerful repulsive force attacking them. This repulsion was completely irresistible, as if the entire realm was expelling them. This is a sign that the secret realm is closing. The thought flashed through everyone's minds. The surroundings began to distort, and the world seemed to change. In an instant, everyone found themselves in a valley. The valley was not large, only about 10 miles in diameter. There were no tall trees in the valley, just some low shrubs and wild grass. It was dusk, and the entire valley could be seen at a glance. Song 1 was located on the edge of the valley. The 3 golden core cultivators from the Jing family Xing Yishuan, Gan Hong, Song 1 and the 6 others were scattered throughout the valley. Above the valley, the 4 nascent soul cultivators, along with the 2 4th-stage late-stage demons and the wind thunder golden-eye beast, were still locked in a fierce struggle. Whoosh, a sound of breaking air came. The pill furnace fell from the sky. Boom! The ground flew up in a cloud of dust. The pill furnace landed about 5 miles away from Song 1, right next to Gan Hong. Gan Hong hesitated for a moment, noticing that the nascent soul experts high in the sky seemed too occupied to pay attention to the situation on the ground. He used his spiritual power to seize the pill furnace, then turned and fled toward the edge of the valley. Jing Lai, who was about a mile away from Gan Hong, saw this and shouted loudly, "Put down the pill furnace!" Jing Lai activated his movement technique and closely pursued Gan Hong. At this moment, a voice came from the sky. Jing Wuming's voice. "All Jing family members, do not engage with others. Withdraw from Fangzudo as quickly as possible." After speaking, Jing Wuming didn't care about the fate of the 3 golden core cultivators. While retracting his giant hand holding the demon soul-breaking pill, he swiftly fled into the distance. "Old bastard of the Jing family, don't run!" Xing Gaohan shouted, chasing after Jing Wuming. Xing Wenyao, having stored the pill wrapped by the vine, looked at the fleeing Jing Wuming and Xing Gaohan, and after a moment's thought, also pursued them. The 2 demons and Inshua were still struggling for the wind thunder golden-eye beast. Inshua's long whip seemed to be of a lower grade, easily cut by the Qingming wind's wind blade. Taking the opportunity, Yuan Hao's Xian Yin heavy water rushed in, forming a blue water ball that surrounded the wind thunder golden-eye beast. The wind thunder golden-eye beast struggled fiercely, kicking its hooves, but the Xianyin water clung to its body like a curse, undeterred by its movements, making it impossible to escape. Seeing that the wind thunder golden-eye beast was about to be pulled away by Yuan Hao, Yin Shua hurriedly shouted, "Stop! I only want the soul from its corpse. You want its body. We have no conflict. Humans, despicable and sly, you are untrustworthy. I will not make any easy deals with you." Yuan Hao's tone was filled with hatred and disdain for humanity. Yin Shua furiously shouted, "How dare these 2 beasts act so arrogantly on human territory?" In the underground hall, the 2 demons were severely injured. Yet even in a one-on-one battle, Yin Shua was not afraid. Yin Shua transformed into a corpse-like form, his face twisted in fury. A massive, sinister death energy poured out of his body, like a dark flood, rushing toward the blue water ball. The death energy condensed into twisted, terrifying ghostly beings. They opened their snarling mouths and relentlessly tore at the blue water ball. Chapter 462. "Stop!" Feng Ying suddenly shouted, "I'll give you the soul within the sacred demon's body." Yin Shua was about to speak, but Yuan Hao hurriedly said, "Feng Ying, what do you mean, making a deal with Yin Shua? Have you forgotten how many demon clan members he has slaughtered?" Feng Ying replied, "Yuan Hao, both of us are seriously injured and should not stay here much longer. It's better to leave quickly. As long as the Green Mountain remains, we need not worry about firewood." Yuan Hao weighed the pros and cons in his mind and, though reluctant, finally said, "Fine, let's do as you say." Yin Shua's expression brightened. "Yuan Hao, you control the Xian Yin heavy water and expose the wind thunder golden eye beast's head. Let my corpse chi enter its body and force out its soul." Following Yin Shua's instructions, Yuan Hao manipulated the Xian Yin heavy water, which slowly shifted, revealing the wind thunder golden eye beast's head. Immediately, the corpse chi poured into the wind thunder golden eye beast's mouth and spread throughout its body. Moments later, a glowing sphere the size of a fist was forced out from the wind thunder golden eye beast's mouth. Inside the glowing sphere, a small figure could be seen. The corpse chi wrapped around the glowing sphere and brought It before in Shua Senior Su Gung, in the end you've fallen into my hands. Do you know the name of the Venerable? A voice came from within the glowing sphere. This is a given. Many of the inheritances of the Nether Shrine have fallen into the hands of my Wuji Island. In Shua said with a smile, it seems you're after the Venerable. What do you want from him? These matters can be discussed in detail once we reach Wuji Island. In Shua took out a soul bottle and sealed the glowing sphere inside it. Farewell, both of you, In Shua said, cupping his hands to the two demons. With that, he turned and sped off into the distance. Fengying and Yuan House stored the Wind Thunder Golden Eye Beast's body and headed towards the sea. Meanwhile, on Song Wen's side, after being transported to the valley, he noticed that several nascent soul cultivators were each acting on their own, completely unaware of the Golden Core. Cultivators like him, Song Wen felt somewhat relieved. He immediately used Thunder Escape to head out of the valley. Thief, don't try to escape. It was Xing Yishuan who had noticed Song Wen. She activated her movement technique and chased after him. At the same time, she waved the flag of waves, summoning several torrents that rushed toward Song Wen. Song Wen felt a little helpless. This woman had targeted him again. As he was thinking of an escape plan, he saw a blood-colored token falling from the sky not far ahead. Song Wen's expression changed slightly. The blood-colored token descending was nearly identical to the ones he had previously received, which were related to the Divine Bloodgate. With Xing Yishuan relentlessly pursuing him and the potential return of the Jing family's nascent soul cultivators, the situation was becoming dire. It seemed that now was not the time to covet treasures. Song Wen considered ignoring the blood-colored token, but in the blink of an eye he came up with a plan to draw attention away from him. The shadow goo flew out, heading for the blood-colored token in midair. After seizing the token, it flew toward the east, diverging from the northern direction Song Wen was fleeing toward. If Xing Yishuan was interested in the secret realm's treasures, the shadow goo might just lead her away. However, to Song Wen's disappointment, it seemed that Xing Yishuan had a deep obsession with the heavenly spirit pill. Perhaps due to her repeated failure to kill him, her hatred for Song Wen had intensified. Xing Yishuan didn't even spare a glance at the shadow goo. She continued to chase after Song Wen. At the same time, she activated the flag of waves again, summoning torrents to wash toward him. Seeing the torrents behind him and Xing Yishuan growing closer, Song Wen's brow furrowed and three transparent sharp blades suddenly appeared in the center of his forehead. The sharp blades swerved around Song Wen and then shot out at high speed, aiming at the pursuing Xing Yishuan. After advancing to the later stage of the Golden Core, Song Wen's spiritual awareness had increased and the number of focused spirit stab he could control had grown to 3. At the same time, he slowed his speed and allowed the torrents to engulf him. Several torrents immediately swallowed his figure, but in the violent tearing of the waves, Song Wen was torn apart on the other side. When Xing Yishuan saw the 3 sharp blades coming toward her, a hint of fear flashed in her eyes. She had never imagined that Song Wen possessed the focused spirit stab technique and had even consumed the heavenly spirit pill, advancing to the 2nd level of the technique. Immediately, her expression became somewhat flustered, and she quickly activated the Beast Bone artifact to protect her sea of consciousness. The 3 spirit blades, emitted by the Beast Bone, intercepted 2 of the blades, and the remaining one had its power greatly diminished, failing to cause any harm to Xing Yishuan's sea of consciousness. With the crisis averted, Xing Yishuan turned her head and happened to see Song Wen being torn apart by the torrents. Xing Yishuan's face showed a flash of joy, but this expression quickly disappeared, replaced by deep suspicion. Given Song Wen's earlier tactics, how could he possibly be killed so easily? Xing Yishuan's mind moved, and the torrents receded. But where was Song Wen's figure? All that remained was a corpse, shredded into pieces. Xing Yishuan's heart burned with anger, mixed with shock. This person has created so many death substitutes. Doesn't he fear soul damage? Could he have a method to refine his soul? Just from what she had seen with her own eyes, Song Wen had already used 2 death substitutes. Xing Yishuan, furious and alarmed, did not give up. She extended her spiritual sense and swept the area. She discovered that Song Wen had already escaped to more than 10 miles east, next to the blood-colored token and the bug. Just as Xing Yishuan was about to chase eastward, she sensed that after Song Wen had put away the bug, his figure exploded into a cloud of blood mist, vanishing from her perception. Her anger flared. and she shot into the air, gazing eastward subconsciously. She believed that Songwen must have fled east. The eastern forest was dense, with no sign of blood mist however. The reality was the exact opposite of her guess, around 110 miles west of the valley. At the foot of a mountain, Songwen's figure suddenly reappeared. Songwen took out 2 jade bottles, consumed the blood essence inside, and once again used the blood escape technique. When he reappeared, he was 350 miles west, standing in a small canyon at this moment. The value of the map Songwen had bought was finally realized. Songwen was familiar with the terrain around Fang City, able to quickly recall secluded spots in his mind, using the terrain and dense forests to cover his use of the blood escape technique and the resulting blood mist. After consuming 2 more bottles of blood essence, he quickly changed his appearance to disguise himself as an elderly man. He then suppressed his aura and continued moving west through the forest. 1,000 miles to the west was Fang City, where many scattered cultivators resided. As long as he blended in, even if Xing Yishuan or the entire Xing family came after him, they wouldn't find him. About 15 minutes later, Songwen arrived at a mountain peak 300 miles outside Fang City. Here, many scattered cultivators frequently passed by. He adjusted his breath to conceal his cultivation at the late stage of qi refining, took out a flying boat, and slowly headed toward Fang City. As for Xing Yishuan, Songwen had not encountered her again. Perhaps she was still searching in some distant location over 1,000 miles away. Entering Fang City, the sky had already darkened by this time. The spellcraft gathering had already concluded, but there were still many foreign cultivators in the city. On the edge of the southern district of Fang City, Songwen found a cheap cultivator's inn and checked in the middle of the night. While meditating in his room, Songwen suddenly sensed a vast spiritual awareness descending. This spiritual sense seemed to be searching for something, sweeping through quickly without pausing. This is the spiritual sense of a nascent soul cultivator. Could it be coming for me? The Xing family must be trying to find the killer of Xingli Ren. Songwen speculated silently in his mind. He suddenly stood up, his face showing shock as he looked at the sky. It wasn't that he was overreacting, the spiritual sense had been completely exposed. And all the cultivators in the inn had felt its presence. They were all stunned, looking up at the sky in astonishment. If he didn't react, it would seem odd. That night, Fang City was far from peaceful. The spiritual sense repeatedly swept through the entire southern district. Perhaps it had discovered something as several battles broke out. However, the strength difference between the two sides was immense, and the battles ended quickly. Chapter 463. Songwen had clearly underestimated the significance of Xingli Ren in Xing Gahan's heart. The next day, at the time of the rooster around 5 a.m., the sky had not yet brightened. A female cultivator from the Xing family, at the foundation building stage, led a group of guards and stormed into the inn. She instructed everyone to gather in the inn's lobby as she would conduct a search, one person at a time. Songwen calmly patted the storage bag at his waist and left his room with an unconcerned expression. After the spiritual sense searched the entire city, he had already made preparations. The storage ring had been sealed in his heart, and not to mention a foundation building cultivator, let alone Xing Gaoan himself, would be able to detect anything wrong. Songwen smoothly passed the search. The cheap-inn was mostly filled with qi refining stage scattered cultivators, and the female cultivator found nothing suspicious. After the female cultivator and her guards left, the other guests did not return to their rooms but instead gathered in the lobby to chat. Shopkeeper, what's going on? Why is the Xing family making such a big move? The shopkeeper, a middle-aged male cultivator, shook his head. Though I have some connections in Fang City, I'm just a qi refining stage cultivator at the 8th level, and this incident must be extremely significant. I have no right to know, however. The shopkeeper lowered his voice and continued. I received a message from a contact living outside the city. The Xing family's search targets are not inside the city but outside. Cultivators above the foundation building stage have nearly all been mobilized. It seems they are about to turn all of Fangzhudo upside down. I don't know what they're looking for. Fangzhudo has a radius of at least 100,000 miles, with mountains, rivers, lakes, and caves. The terrain is so complicated there's no way the Xing family can search every inch, right? One of the guests asked. The shopkeeper shook his head. I don't know about that, but in the past few days, we should all be more cautious and keep a low profile to avoid offending the Xing family. The other guests nodded in agreement, clearly understanding the situation. 7 days later, after the Xing family failed to find what they were looking for, they were finally forced to call off their search. Meanwhile, the true murderer, Songwon, had already boarded a large flying ship heading to Bixia Island. Bixia Island was about 300,000 miles from Fangzhou, a medium-sized island with an area of 10,000 miles controlled by a golden core family. This island was a key transit point for traveling to and from Fangzhou, with many cultivators passing through. Therefore, there were large merchant ships specifically for transporting cultivators between Bixia Island and Fangzhou. Songwon had to leave Fangzhou because his methods such as the shadow goo, blood escape technique, and death substitutes had already been exposed if he stayed on Fangzhou. Using these techniques in combat would reveal his identity and attract the Xing family's pursuit. His destination was Wuji Island. Though Wuji Island called itself a sect, it functioned more like a cultivator alliance. Wuji Island was divided into the inner and outer sects. The inner sect consisted of core disciples, a relatively small number, while the outer sect was made up of scattered cultivators who joined Wuji Island midway. Many in number, these scattered cultivators were not truly loyal to Wuji Island. They simply relied on the powerful influence of Wuji Island, engaging in a mutually beneficial exchange with the sect's core members. Moreover, Wuji Island practiced corpse Dao cultivation, and Songwon needed many corpse Dao spiritual materials which were easier to find on Wuji Island. The journey was peaceful. After several days of flying over the sea, the ship landed in a city. Songwon disembarked, took a boat, and flew northwest toward the city. Wuji Island was located 8 million miles to the northwest, and with Songwon's speed, he could reach it within a month. After leaving Bixia Island, the sea was dotted with small islands. Songwon put away the flying boat and flew at full speed. After traveling several tens of thousands of miles, Songwon found a deserted island and landed. The storage ring was sealed in his heart, making him feel quite uncomfortable. He needed to find a suitable place to remove it. This uninhabited island was relatively small, with a radius of over 50 miles. It was covered in lush greenery, making it easy to hide his tracks. Songwon found a cave on a cliff by the sea to use as a temporary residence. After setting up a formation, Songwon took out the storage ring. He first retrieved a blood-red token, which was engraved with the word seal. Songwon's expression brightened. Based on his past experience, tokens with inscriptions were always extremely valuable. He probed with his spiritual sense and found that this token recorded the crafting method for a life-bound magic treasure. The life-bound magic treasure was called the Blood Sea Seal. The crafting process for the Blood Sea Seal was extremely bloody and cruel. It required the refining of the blood of countless living beings. The more living blood that was refined, the stronger the power of the Blood Sea Seal. Before crafting this treasure, the blood of living beings had to be refined and purified. This was a time-consuming and labor-intensive process that could not be entrusted to others. Next, the cultivator needed to merge the purified blood with their own spiritual power to form a blood sea embryo. This step was the most critical and dangerous part of the process. During this stage, the cultivator had to immerse their mind completely into the blood sea embryo, establishing a spiritual connection with it. The blood sea embryo was formed from the blood of countless living beings, and within it, the grudges of those beings remained. When these vengeful spirits gathered, they would create a terrifying spiritual pollution. A slight mistake could result in a backlash from the spirit's resentment, trapping the cultivator in an inescapable abyss. Finally, the cultivator needed to gather several rare spiritual materials and use special ritual techniques to condense the Blood Sea Seal. Songwon found that the first two steps, which were the most difficult, were actually the easiest for him. He could directly consume the blood essence of others, then expel the blood essence, completing the refining process without the risk of backlash from resentment. The blood essence he expelled would be equivalent to his own, so it would not turn against him. The only challenge left was how to gather the required rare spiritual materials. With a thought song, when summoned a square blood brick in front of him, the blood brick contained a massive amount of blood essence, which was perfect for refining the Blood Sea Seal. After putting away the blood brick and the token, Songwon began to inventory the items he had obtained from Xing Li Ren's storage ring. Although he had already thrown away Xing Li Ren's storage ring, all the contents had been transferred to his own storage ring. Xing Li Ren's belongings were extremely rich. including over 200 high-grade spirit stones, a number of pills, spiritual materials, and even a few materials needed to craft the blood sea seal. Songwon took out the cold light mirror, which was Xingli Ren's lifebound magic treasure. A lifebound magic treasure is intimately connected with the cultivator's mind and is far more powerful than ordinary treasures. But after the cultivator's death, it is difficult for others to fully unleash its true power, even with reforging. Thus, the cold light mirror wasn't of much use to Songwon and could be sold at a low price. However, Songwon did find a defensive magic treasure among Xingli Ren's belongings. This treasure, shaped like an iron scroll, was called the 10 Directions Map. It was a mid-grade treasure that, when activated, could form a defensive barrier. The shape and size of the barrier could be adjusted according to the cultivator's will. However, the larger the barrier, the more spiritual power it consumed. Chapter 464. Over a month later, Songwon arrived at Wuji Island. Wuji Island itself was not very large, about 2,000 to 3,000 miles in diameter. Surrounding Wuji Island were numerous smaller islands, all under the jurisdiction of Wuji Island. Songwon arrived at the heart of Wuji Island Shadow City. This was the place where inner disciples of Wuji Island practiced, and it was also the largest market for goods on Wuji Island and the nearby island chain. Songwon walked through the bustling streets, observing the various spiritual items for sale in the many shops in Shadow City. All sorts of demonic materials could be found everywhere, including many third-tier spiritual items compared to the righteous sects like Fang City. The demonic sects acted more freely, without many rules or restrictions. Any unusable spiritual items could be sold. This meant that Wuji Island had less control over high-tier spiritual items, which was beneficial for loose cultivators. After passing through the market, Songwon arrived at the true center of power on Wuji Island, Corpse King Valley. Corpse King Valley was about several dozen miles wide, with a terrifying aura of death and corpse chi swirling throughout. The valley was barren, with no plants or trees. Only a chilling and lifeless atmosphere. Around the valley were small mountains, which housed the inner disciples' residences. Outsiders were forbidden from ascending these mountains. Inside the valley were the various institutions of Wuji Island. After entering the valley, Songwon walked for a while and arrived in front of a black building. The building was labeled with 3 large characters: External Affairs Hall. The External Affairs Hall had 3 floors, each corresponding to the 3 cultivation realms: Qi Refining, Foundation Establishment, and Golden Core. Songwon went straight to the 3rd floor. While the 1st floor was crowded, the 3rd floor was quiet and empty, with only a young Foundation Establishment cultivator lying on a desk, half asleep. Upon noticing Songwon's arrival, the young cultivator quickly scanned him with his spiritual sense, and his expression immediately became respectful. Younger disciple Jing Kai greets senior. Songwon had only slightly altered his appearance and did not hide his cultivation level. He directly revealed his Golden Core early-stage cultivation. His experiences on Fangzudo had shown him that cultivators at different levels had their own circles. To quickly improve his cultivation and strength, Songwon needed various third-tier spiritual medicines and materials. If he disguised himself as a Foundation Establishment cultivator, he would be safer, but many third-tier spiritual items would be out of his reach. Songwon wore a slight expression of arrogance, nodded, and spoke. Demonic cultivators were often arrogant and dismissive of lower-level cultivators. Since he was in demonic territory, Songwon decided to go with the flow. Appearing humble might attract unnecessary attention and trouble. Jing Kai asked, "Senior seems unfamiliar to me. May I ask, is this your first time at Wuji Island?" Songwon replied, "Indeed, I am a loose cultivator from the Eastern Sea region. I've long heard of Wuji Island's great reputation, and I've always admired it. However, the vast sea and numerous obstacles prevented me from coming until after I reached the Golden Core realm, so I could finally visit this holy land of the demonic path." Jing Kai looked surprised. "So, you came from the Eastern Sea region? My master once mentioned that Fangzudo in the Eastern Sea is also a blessed cultivation land, abundant with spiritual energy and opportunities. Fangzudo is indeed rich in spiritual resources," Songwon replied, "but that is speaking from the perspective of the righteous sect. The Xing family on Fangzudo severely suppresses demonic cultivators like us." Songwon then asked, "May I ask who your master is?" A proud glint flashed in Jing Kai's eyes. "My master is Yu Qi, Yuchi was a mid-stage golden core cultivator and a registered disciple of Wuji Islands in Shua. Before entering the valley, Songwon had gathered some information about Wuji Island to avoid being completely blind. I see. So you're a disciple of the demonic sect. It seems I was blind, Songwon said. He immediately became warmer towards Jing Kai. The demon lord has not officially accepted my master into the sect, so I am not yet considered a disciple of the demon lord, Jing Kai said. Though his tone was modest, his expression revealing a sense of pride, Songwon flipped his hand, producing 2 jade bottles and handing them to Jing Kai. It's our first meeting. This is just a small token of my appreciation. I hope you don't mind. The bottles contained 5 spirit pills, which were used by Foundation establishment cultivators in the Chaotic Sea to enhance their cultivation. Each bottle contained 15 pills with a total value of approximately 2,500 spirit stones. These pills were ones that Songwon had created when he first arrived at Fong City to familiarize himself with the pill-making techniques of the Chaotic Sea. Jing Kai was momentarily stunned, clearly not expecting a golden core cultivator like Songwon to give him a gift. I can't accept such a gift. How could I take something from you, senior? Songwon smiled faintly and directly placed the jade bottles in Jing Kai's hands. These are just some 5 spirit pills I made myself. You needn't refuse. Besides, I've already advanced to golden core. These pills are no longer useful to me. In that case, I will accept it with gratitude. Thank you for the gift, senior. Jing Kai gladly accepted the pills, his face showing delight. May I ask for your honored name, senior? Jiin. Greetings, Senior Jiin. Jing Kai bowed. Then he took out a sea map, infused it with spiritual energy, and the map suddenly enlarged, becoming 30 feet long and wide, floating in the air. Senior, please take a look. This is a map of the islands around Wuji Island. Within a radius of 100,000 miles, there are thousands of islands. These islands are divided into 3 categories: heaven, earth, and human. As a golden core cultivator, you may choose a heaven-grade island as your territory. Songwon looked at the map and saw that the east, south, and west of Wuji Island were dotted with thousands of islands, large and small. The islands were marked in 3 colors: black, white, and gold. Most of the islands had names, though some did not. The islands with names have already been occupied, while the unnamed ones are temporarily vacant, Jing Kai explained. Songwon pointed to the northern part of the map and asked curiously, this island is so large, could it also be vacant? In the northern part of Wuji Island, there was only one island, a vast one, measuring at least 200,000 miles. The map did not indicate the name of this island. A smile appeared on Jing Kai's face. That is Sheep Island. Sheep Island? An island for raising sheep? Songwon asked, puzzled. Jing Kai nodded. Exactly, but this sheep is not what you think. The island raises 2-legged sheep. Songwon furrowed his brow. He had not expected that Sheep Island was used for raising humans. Jing Kai continued to explain, Sheep Island is vast, with flat terrain, but its spiritual energy is quite sparse. It's not an ideal place for cultivators to practice, but it's perfect for human life and reproduction. The entire island is home to millions of 2-legged sheep. Senior, you must remember that the airspace above Sheep Island and its vicinity is a restricted area for cultivators. You must never trespass. A restricted area for cultivators? This was the first time Songwon had heard this term. Jing Kai nodded. Except for the shepherds and others working on the island, no one is allowed to set foot on Sheep Island. No cultivation methods, magical tools, or pills are permitted. Nothing related to cultivation is allowed. Why is that? Songwon inquired. It's to keep the 2-legged sheep ignorant and foolish, to let them live without knowing anything, generation after generation, breeding continuously to provide us cultivators with an endless supply of blood and souls. They think their lives are full of hope, believing that Sheep Island is the entirety of the world. It's truly laughable. Chapter 465. I have some doubts in my mind, and I hope young friend Jing Kai can help clarify them, Songwon said. Please speak, senior, Jing Kai responded. Wuji Island harvests a large number of 2-legged sheep every year, with many people disappearing. How could the 2-legged sheep not notice this? Jing Kai explained, there is a countermeasure for this. We use various natural obstacles, artificially created terrain, and even illusionary formations to divide the entire Sheep Island into hundreds of areas, large and small. When the number of 2-legged sheep in a certain area reaches its peak, it enters the harvest period. After all the sheep in that area are harvested, sheep from other areas are transferred to fill the gap. Then, once they reproduce, We begin the next harvest. On Sheep Island, only ordinary martial arts training is allowed. Cultivation methods are strictly forbidden. The shepherds are responsible not only for harvesting the sheep but also for monitoring the island. If any two-legged sheep with exceptional talent for martial arts or cultivation are found, they must be killed immediately to prevent them from cultivating. Songwon nodded. Thank you, young friend Jing Kai, for the clarification. Senior, no need to be so polite, Jing Kai said. He pointed to the map and continued, you may choose any of the vacant islands. Songwon did not rush to choose but instead asked, what are the differences between the heaven, earth, and human-grade islands? Jing Kai replied, the heaven-grade islands have the most abundant spiritual energy, followed by earth-grade, and then the human-grade islands, which are the least favorable. What do I need to pay? Songwon didn't believe there could be a free lunch in this world. It was impossible for Wuji Island to just give him an island for no reason. Jing Kai explained, once you occupy an island, you must serve Wuji Island by completing a certain number of sect tasks each year and earning enough contribution points. A human island requires 1,000 contribution points, an earth island requires 10,000, and a heaven island requires 100,000 contribution points. What happens if I can't complete the tasks? Songwon asked, you can make up the difference with spirit stones. 1 contribution point can be exchanged for 1 spirit stone. If you accumulate extra contribution points, they can be exchanged for spirit stones as well. Songwon nodded slightly. That doesn't sound too expensive. Then I will choose a heaven-grade island. The black-colored islands on the map are the heaven-grade islands. You may choose any one, Jing Kai said. Songwon studied the map for a moment before pointing to one of the islands. I'll choose this one. The island Songwon selected was crescent-shaped, with a maximum length of no more than 100 miles. It was about 40,000 miles away from Wuji Island, and the surrounding islands were all human-grade. This would make it difficult for anyone to notice any secret activities on his island. Jing Kai said, all right, I will register it for you now, senior. He then raised his hand and sent out a faint spiritual force, imbuing it into the map. The map immediately changed, and the island Songwon chose was now named Ji-in Island. Jing Kai took out a jade plate the size of a grinding stone, along with 9 small silver flags. Senior, this is the Starry Line Formation, a 6-tier formation. You can place this formation on Ji-in Island. It will signal to outsiders that the island has an owner, and they will not dare to trespass. Additionally, the formation has communication capabilities, allowing for long-distance message transmission. If the sect has any tasks for you, they will send them through this formation. Songwon nodded and accepted the jade plate and small flags. Jing Kai then handed Songwon a palm-sized token. Senior, this is your identity token. After you leave your aura on it, you will be able to use it from now on. You are a Golden Core Elder of Wuji Island. Wuji Island was a sect of loose cultivators, and the relationship between loose cultivators and Wuji Island was akin to that of an employer and employee. Loose cultivators like Songwon did not owe any loyalty to Wuji Island, and Wuji Island did not treat them as core members. Many secret techniques would not be passed down to them. Therefore, Wuji Island did not require Songwon to undergo any identity verification or leave his soul imprint. Young friend Jing Kai, where can I receive sect tasks? Songwon asked. Jing Kai replied, at the mission hall, located 3 miles east of the External Affairs Hall. Songwon was about to bid farewell and leave when he suddenly heard Jing Kai's voice again. Senior, are you an alchemist? Earlier, Songwon had mentioned that the 5 spirit pills were something he had personally refined. Indeed, I am. May I ask if you have any advice? Songwon replied. Jing Kai said, I wouldn't dare offer advice, but if Senior is an alchemist, you might want to pay more attention to the alchemy-related tasks. The rewards are generous, and there is no danger involved. Thank you, I will take my leave. Senior, please take care. Songwon left the External Affairs Hall and went directly to the Mission Hall. The Mission Hall wasn't a building but an open-air plaza. In the center of the plaza, 9 giant scrolls were suspended in mid-air. The scrolls recorded various tasks. These tasks were divided into 9 levels. Level 1 was the simplest. Tasks that early-stage chi refining cultivators could complete. Level 9 was the most difficult, requiring at least golden core cultivation to take on. Each task was accompanied by its corresponding rewards and contribution points. The rewards were not necessarily spirit stones. They could also be pills, spiritual herbs, magic tools, and so on. The mission hall allowed both accepting and posting tasks, though posting tasks required rewards or contribution points, with a portion taken by Wuji Island. The plaza was bustling with thousands of people. Songwon stood at the edge of the plaza, his gaze scanning the scrolls of levels 7, 8, and 9. There were fewer tasks on these scrolls, mostly related to items required by Golden Core cultivators, and some of the level 9 tasks even involved 4-tiered spiritual materials. Songwon carefully examined each task. Though he could not complete most of them, they provided valuable opportunities to broaden his horizons. The tasks were diverse and strange. Some involved purchasing pills or spiritual materials, some sought martial arts or secret techniques, some were about team treasure hunts, and some were looking for alchemy. Furnaces. Some tasks had been posted for dozens of days without anyone taking them. Songwon found several tasks that piqued his interest, which were: purchase 100 Jinyu pills. Reward: 40,000 lower-grade spirit stones, plus 10,000 contribution points. Purchase Golden Core pills. Reward: 35 high-grade spirit stones, plus 100,000 contribution points. Purchase Yellow Springs Corrupt Flame. Reward: 50 high-grade spirit stones. Or Earth Burial Lotus. Purchase Blood Jade Coral. Reward: 100,000 lower-grade spirit stones, plus 20,000 contribution points. Purchase an Eye Technique. Reward: 30 high-grade spirit stones. Or 3 Fire Evil. Songwon was interested in these tasks because the first two were tasks he could complete. The Earth Burial Lotus was a spiritual material required for refining the Blood Sea Seal, and the Blood Jade Coral was a spiritual medicine needed for the Corpse Curse water. However, Songwon didn't have the Yellow Springs Corrupt Flame and so could not exchange it for the Earth Burial Lotus. As for the Blood Jade Coral, it was something someone else was looking for, so he couldn't acquire it either. The last task interested him because he had never refined any special evil energies, which made his cultivation of the Evil Path Ghost Scroll ineffective. The 3 Fire Evil was a perfect fit for his current cultivation level. But he also didn't have an Eye Technique, so he couldn't complete the task. These tasks served as a reminder. He could use rare items he couldn't currently use to trade for the spiritual materials he needed. Chapter 466. Although Songwon was moved, he did not accept any of the tasks. He had just arrived at Wuji Island and was still unfamiliar with the situation on the island. He decided to first get a better understanding of the prices of various spiritual materials before making any decisions, so he wouldn't be taken advantage of. Songwon left the Corpse King Valley and wandered through the Shadow City Market. During this time, he spent 2,000 spirit stones to purchase a topographical map of Wuji Island and a sea chart of the surrounding waters. By the time the sun was setting, Songwon soared toward Jiin Island. The 40,000-mile journey only took him 2 hours to complete. Jiin Island was crescent-shaped, with steep terrain and cliffs rising abruptly from the sea. The island was rich in spiritual energy, covered in dense vegetation, and teeming with life. The air was filled with the sounds of birds, and animals leaped through the forests. An ideal place for cultivating immortality. Songwon hovered above the island and released 6 goo. After reaching the later stage of Golden Core, his spiritual sense expanded to a range of 24 miles, with the assistance of the sacred goo. His spiritual sense covered a total area of 48 miles, surpassing even the peak Golden Core cultivators. The longest distance across the island was no more than 70 miles, and most of the island was now within Songwon's perception. To his surprise, Songwon detected someone on the island. In the center of the island, on a cliff, was a man-made cave dwelling. The cave dwelling was hidden by a concealment formation, which was strong enough to deceive the spiritual sense of Golden Core cultivators. However, Songwon used the Breaking Darkness technique to forcefully break through it. Inside the cave dwelling were 3 cultivators, 1 man and 2 women. The man was a late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, while the 2 women were mid-stage Qi refining cultivators. Obviously his maids. The 3 had clearly been living in the cave for some months. Inside, there were all sorts of items required for cultivation, and they had even cultivated a small spiritual garden where many spiritual herbs were being grown. Songwon swiftly appeared at the entrance of the cave and waved his hand. A burst of spiritual power hit the formation protecting the cave. Boom! The sound was deafening, however. The damage was minimal. Only a few stones at the entrance of the cave were knocked off. Since this island would be his territory from now on, he naturally couldn't allow any wanton destruction. The sound startled the man inside the cave. "Who dares to make trouble at my Pengguang's cave?" The man's furious voice echoed. Although he could sense Song Wen's cultivation, he didn't believe that Song Wen's single attack could cause any significant damage. He thought Song Wen's cultivation level should be low. At most, a Foundation establishment cultivator Pengguang opened the cave's protective barrier and stepped out. When he saw Song Wen floating in midair, without any help from flying boats or flying swords, his expression changed drastically. To be able to fly without any magical tools meant that Song Wen was either using flight magic or was a cultivator at or above the golden core stage. Pengguang was immediately filled with fear, shrinking back in trepidation. "I am Pengguang, paying respects to Senior. I apologize for my earlier impudence. Please forgive me," he said. Bowing, Song Wen remained indifferent, not acknowledging him. Instead, he strolled casually through the air, landing on a stone platform outside the cave. He observed his surroundings, occasionally nodding as if very satisfied with the cave. The cave was built on a particularly rich vein of spiritual energy on the island. The only drawback was that there were no natural concealments around the cave, making it easy for others to discover without saying a word. Song Wen applied tremendous psychological pressure on Pengguang. Not knowing Song Wen's background or the purpose of his visit, Pengguang could only stand cautiously to the side, bowing his head in deference. Noticing Song Wen's scrutinizing gaze as he examined the cave, Pengguang's heart suddenly filled with intense fear and unease. "Senior, may I ask why you have come here?" He struggled to steady his emotions and spoke, but saw that Song Wen completely ignored him and directly entered the cave. Upon seeing Song Wen enter, the two female cultivators were at a loss. The two women looked very similar, likely twin sisters. Their clothes were extremely thin, almost non-existent, and their slender, beautiful figures were barely concealed. Plop. The two female cultivators suddenly knelt on the ground, their foreheads pressing tightly against the floor. Their bodies trembled slightly, showing clear signs of fear. It seemed they had been subjected to long-term oppression and abuse by Pengguang, which had made them incredibly timid and scared of everything. This kind of fear had seeped deep into their bones, making them panic at even the slightest disturbance. Song Wen ignored the two female cultivators and continued to inspect the cave. Outside, Pengguang was enduring a tremendous psychological pressure which made him feel incredibly tormented. He glanced at Song Wen, who was inspecting the cave, then turned his eyes to the vast sky outside the cliff, and for a moment, the thought of escaping crossed his mind. He subtly moved his feet and edged closer to the cliff's edge. "If you take another step, today will be your last." Song Wen's cold voice rang out. "Senior, you misunderstand. I did not intend to escape," Pengguang said with deep fear and respect. "Come inside," Song Wen said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Pengguang did not dare to disobey and walked into the cave. "Why are you cultivating on this island?" Song Wen asked. Pengguang still held onto a shred of hope. "Senior, this island belongs to me. I have the credentials issued by the External Affairs Hall," he said. "Your island?" Song Wen's mouth curled into a cold smile. "Are you saying the External Affairs Hall is selling the island twice?" Pengguang's face turned ashen, and all his hope vanished. "Senior, please spare my life. I only saw the island was unoccupied and temporarily settled here." "Temporarily settled here?" Song Wen fixed his gaze on him. Song Wen didn't believe Pengguang's words. Only golden core cultivators were eligible to live on a heavenly grade island. A Foundation establishment cultivator occupying an uninhabited heavenly grade island was simply courting death. "I spent 10,000 spirit stones to buy the information about the vacant island from Chu Qian. He promised me that if anyone came to occupy the island, he would inform me in time, but..." Pengguang, seeing that he couldn't hide it anymore, could only tell the truth. "Chu Qian? Who is he?" Song Wen asked. From Pengguang's words, it seemed Chu Qian was from Wuji Island, but when Song Wen bought the information about Wuji Island, this person was not mentioned. Pengguang replied. "Chu Qian is the only son of Elder Chu Lingyun from the inner sect of Wuji Island. He's a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator." Chu Lingyun was indeed mentioned in the information, and he was a late-stage golden core cultivator. Song Wen asked with some confusion. "You trust Chu Qian so much? Aren't you afraid he'll just take the money and do nothing? Ping Guang replied, Chu Qian is very skilled in socializing. Although his cultivation talent is mediocre, he's very adept at making connections, and his influence in the inner sect of Wuji Island is vast. Because of this, he managed to obtain information about vacant islands and sold it to many people. He has sold vacant island information to many buyers. He's made a lot of spirit stones from this, and I've never heard of any mistakes. As he spoke, Peng Guang's gaze shifted to a corner of the cave. There, a large jade plate, the size of a grinding disc, was placed. It was the Starry Line Formation, but it seemed incomplete or perhaps broken, unlike what Jing Kai had mentioned. There were no warning light columns shining above the island, alerting outsiders that the island had already been occupied. Peng Guang's eyes grew dark and gloomy, showing his deep resentment toward Chu Qian. At this moment, the jade plate suddenly trembled. Chapter 467. The Starry Line Formation can transmit information over long distances, up to 100,000 miles, but compared to a message jade slip, its operation is much more complicated. First, the formation setup is difficult, involving complex calculations of star positions, which is time-consuming and mentally taxing. Secondly, this formation is divided into two parts: the main formation and several subformations. The main formation connects to multiple subformations, enabling communication with all of them. The formation in Song Wen's hands is a subformation, which can only connect with the main formation and not with other subformations. Lastly, the transmission of information has a time delay. The greater the distance, the longer it takes for the message to be sent. When the two sides are 100,000 miles apart, it takes more than a quarter of an hour to receive the message. Peng Guang watched the trembling jade plate with a resentful expression. The other end of this starry line formation was connected to Chu Qian. Chu Qian had likely sent a message to inform him that the island had a new owner and to leave immediately. However, the message came too late, as the island's owner was already standing before him. I was wrong to trespass on Senior's island, Peng Guang said respectfully. I am willing to make amends. Please, Senior, spare me this once. Song Wen did not give a direct answer but instead asked, Chu Qian has extensive connections in the inner sect of Wuji Island, doesn't he? Peng Guang replied, How would I dare deceive Senior? You can easily ask around and verify this. Song Wen frowned and thought for a moment before saying, I can overlook your trespassing, but you must help me with something. Peng Guang's face brightened. Senior, please say the word. As long as it's within my ability, I won't refuse. Song Wen replied, It's not a difficult task. Just introduce me to Chu Qian. Peng Guang was stunned. Is that all? For someone like Song Wen, a golden core cultivator, it would be easy to meet Chu Qian. However, Song Wen had only just arrived here and didn't know anyone, so finding Chu Qian was actually quite troublesome. Seeing Song Wen's confirmation, Peng Guang continued, I will use the jade plate to contact Chu Qian right away. I didn't know you were the owner of this island earlier, and I have disturbed you. Most of the blame lies with Chu Qian, and he should come here to apologize to you. After speaking, he walked briskly to the jade plate, where he read the message as expected. The message from Chu Qian was informing him to leave the island as soon as possible. The island now has an owner. The senior is magnanimous and is not pursuing my fault, but he wishes to meet a fellow Taoist. I hope you can come to the island for a meeting. Although Peng Guang felt resentful, he knew he couldn't offend Chu Qian now, nor could he let Chu Qian think that Song Wen was dangerous otherwise. If Chu Qian avoided meeting him, he would be in a passive position. After about a quarter of an hour, a reply came from Chu Qian, fellow Taoist Peng. No problem, however. I am currently dealing with some matters and cannot leave Wuji Island. Could you please ask the senior to come to Wuji Island for a meeting? Clearly, Chu Qian did not trust Peng Guang completely and was unwilling to personally visit the island, preferring to meet Song Wen on Wuji Island instead. Peng Guang's anger deepened. He was well aware that it was Chu Qian's fault for accepting money and not fulfilling his promises. Yet he was unwilling to take any risks. He hesitated for a while, and after a moment, he muttered to Song Wen, Senior, Chu Qian has invited you to Wuji Island for a meeting. Peng Guang expected Song Wen to be angry, but instead, Song Wen merely said coldly, "Fine. You arrange the time and place with him." Peng Guang immediately felt relieved. His spirits lifted. "I'll arrange it with Chu Qian right away." 2 hours later, Peng Guang returned to Song Wen. "Senior, I've arranged with Chu Qian. We will meet tomorrow at the Tide Listening Pavilion on Wuji Island at the hour of Wei. 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. All right?" Song Wen responded lightly. After scanning the cave one last time, Song Wen continued, "Clean up the cave and take all your belongings with you." Peng Guang said, "Thank you, senior. Please wait for a moment. I will clean up and make everything spotless." All the cultivation-related items in the cave were quickly stored by Peng Guang into his storage ring. Then, with 2 light gusts of wind, the cave was left completely spotless. Peng Guang glanced at the darkening sky outside and said, "It's getting late, senior. Please rest for the night. I will stay outside the cave and keep watch for you. These 2 women have been properly trained, so you can relax tonight." He pointed to the 2 qi refining female cultivators. The 2 women knelt silently on the ground, not daring to make a sound. "Take them as well. I'm not interested in them." Peng Guang nodded humbly. "It was presumptuous of me. With their delicate appearances, how could they be worthy of senior?" Afterward, he took the 2 female cultivators and left the cave. He summoned a small flying ship, which hovered just outside the cave, like a dutiful guard, watching over the surroundings of the island. The night passed without incident. The next day, at the hour of Wei, Song Wen arrived at the flying ship. "Let's go set off for Wuji Island." With only 2 hours remaining until the appointed time, Peng Guang's speed would definitely not allow him to reach Wuji Island in time. Song Wen had no choice but to use his flying sword to take him there quickly. As for the 2 female cultivators, Peng Guang had given them a small boat and told them to wait on an empty island several hundred miles away until he returned. It seemed that Peng Guang had placed some kind of restriction on them, so he wasn't worried they would escape at the hour of Wei. Song Wen and the others arrived at Tide Listening Pavilion as scheduled, where they found Chu Qian waiting outside. Chu Qian was different from most demon cultivators, who often had a gloomy and sinister demeanor. His face was gentle, his posture tall, and his movements composed, giving off a steady and reliable aura that made others feel at ease. Upon seeing Song Wen and Peng Guang arrive, Chu Qian quickly approached to greet them. "Junior Chu Qian greets Senior Ji In regarding yesterday's matter. It was all my fault, and I hope Senior will overlook it. It was just a minor issue. There's no need for you to worry, Junior. But how did you learn my name?" Song Wen asked, his voice cold despite the smile on his face. Faced with Song Wen's questioning, Chu Qian remained calm and answered without panic. "It was on the latest sea chart of Wuji Island, where Senior's name was listed." Song Wen nodded slightly. "Junior Chu, this isn't a good place to talk. Let's find somewhere quiet." Chu Qian gestured toward the interior of Tide Listening Pavilion. "Please follow me, Senior. I've already arranged a spiritual feast to apologize for the incident." The 3 of them entered a private room within the pavilion. Inside the room, a lavish spiritual feast had already been set up. Once they sat down, Chu Qian once again apologized to Song Wen and Peng Guang, compensating Peng Guang with 30,000 spirit stones to make up for the scare he had received the previous day. Peng Guang, who had previously harbored a lot of resentment toward Chu Qian, instantly brightened up upon receiving the spirit stones, his anger completely dissipating. The atmosphere in the private room quickly became warm and friendly. After 3 rounds of drinks, Chu Qian asked, "Senior Ji In, you asked me to meet through Peng Guang. May I ask what the matter is?" Song Wen replied, "I heard that you have extensive connections, and I have a small request. I hope you can assist me." A smile appeared at the corner of Chu Qian's mouth. Clearly expecting something like this, although his cultivation was a bit lacking, his wide network allowed even some golden core cultivators on Wuji Island to show him a bit of respect. Chapter 468. "Please speak, Senior," Chu Qian said. "I wish to purchase some rare 3rd-tier spiritual materials, but I don't know where to find them. I would like to ask for your help." Song Wen said, "What kind of spiritual materials is Senior looking for?" Chu Qian asked, Blood Jade Coral. Songwon replied currently. The third-tier spiritual materials Songwon needed were not limited to just Blood Jade Coral, however. He was unsure about Chu Qian's character and the connections he had with golden core cultivators or the rare spiritual materials he could obtain. Therefore, Songwon decided to be cautious and did not reveal everything. Chu Qian furrowed his brow slightly. Senior, although Blood Jade Coral isn't exactly rare among third-tier materials, it is highly versatile, and very few cultivators are willing to part with it for trade. Songwon asked, "Can't you find any Blood Jade Coral, Junior Chu?" Chu Qian shook his head. "It's not that I can't find it, but it will take some time, and the price won't be low. May I ask how many years' worth of Blood Jade Coral Senior requires?" "Over 10 years, Songwon said. "The price for 10 top-quality spirit stones. Would that be acceptable to Senior?" Chu Qian inquired. Songwon didn't immediately agree, but instead pondered it in his mind at the mission hall. He had seen the purchase price for Blood Jade Coral listed as 100,000 low-grade spirit stones, plus 20,000 contribution points. The total value was around 120,000 low-grade spirit stones. Chu Qian's price was higher than this, but not by much. Moreover, the price at the mission hall might not be entirely accurate. "Fine. I will accept your price, Junior Chu," Songwon said. Chu Qian replied, "Senior Ji-in, it's not that I don't trust you, but since this is our first transaction, I will need a deposit." "How much?" Songwon asked. "One top-quality spirit stone should be enough." Chu Qian answered. Songwon took out a top-quality spirit stone and handed it over. After Chu Qian received the spirit stone, he said, "Senior, please wait for a while. Once I have the Blood Jade Coral, I will contact you immediately." Songwon nodded in agreement. Chu Qian suddenly asked, "Senior Ji-in, I heard from Jing Kai that you are a pill master?" Songwon smiled and said, "Junior Chu, you're quite well informed. May I ask why you inquire about this?" Chu Qian said, "I was simply hoping that, if you have any pills available for sale, you would consider giving me priority. I can guarantee that the prices I offer for pills will not be lower than those of the shops in the markets." Songwon replied, "That's fine." Chu Qian smiled. "Then it's settled. Come. Let me toast to you, Senior." The banquet was enjoyable for both the host and guests, and everyone left afterward. Songwon flew alone toward Jiyin Island. As for Pengguang, Songwon had no intention of taking him along. When Songwon arrived at Jiyin Island, he found that the two qi refining female cultivators were still lingering on the island. They were standing on the platform outside the cave, clearly waiting for Songwon's return. Although the two women looked almost identical, a closer look revealed slight differences. One appeared more mature, while the other seemed somewhat younger. "Why haven't you left?" Songwon asked coldly, his voice sharp. The two women immediately knelt, their faces filled with sorrow and pleading expressions. "Please, Senior, take us in," the more mature woman said. Likely the older of the two, she continued. "We are both disciples of Wuji Island. A year ago, we were forcefully captured by Pengguang and brought here, suffering under his torment. This past year, we have lived like we are in hell, each day worse than death." Songwon's expression remained cold. "What does this have to do with me?" The older sister looked up, her gaze pleading as she turned to Songwon. "Senior, we are truly at the end of our rope. All we ask for is a place to live in peace." Songwon replied, "I don't need useless people here, nor do I take in those who are pitiful. Your grudge with Pengguang has nothing to do with me. I'll give you 30 breaths of time. If you don't leave the island by then, don't blame me for being ruthless. Senior, I know a place where the Gui Yuan Qi can be found. I wonder if we could use this as a condition to ask Senior to take us in," the older sister said. Songwon raised an eyebrow, intrigued. The Gui Yuan Qi was an extremely chaotic and dense evil aura. It was often used to refine magical defense treasures or enhance the bodies of puppets. "Oh, you, a mere qi refining 5th-layer rogue cultivator, know where the Gui Yuan Qi is?" Songwen's voice carried a hint of amusement, showing that he didn't fully believe her. "Our father was once a foundation establishment cultivator. 2 years ago, he returned from an outing, his body covered in evil qi. which had already invaded his internal organs. Not even an immortal could save him. 2 days later, he died. The poison he was infected with was none other than the Gui Yuan Qi, the older sister explained. Then why didn't you use this as leverage to bargain with Ping Guang for your freedom? Songwen asked. The older sister's expression turned bitter. Senior, Ping Guang is despicable. If he knew of the Gui Yuan Qi's existence, not only would he refuse to free us, but he would also use any means necessary to torture us, forcing us to reveal the location of the evil Qi. Songwen thought for a moment. Perhaps we can strike a different kind of deal. You tell me where the Gui Yuan Qi is, and I will help you kill Ping Guang and return your freedom. The older sister shook her head. Our strength is too weak, and we have no one to rely on in this demonic realm. Even if we escaped from Ping Guang, we would still be targeted by other evil people. You see things clearly, Songwen said. The older sister suddenly reached out and lifted her younger sister's head, which had been hanging low. The younger sister's face, though beautiful, was filled with despair, and in her eyes, there was a hint of numbness. If Senior doesn't mind our filthy bodies, we can serve you together, just hoping that you will treat us as human beings, the older sister said. Songwen looked at the two women's figures, which were faintly revealed, then glanced at the entrance of the cave. An idea suddenly formed in his mind. I can take you in, but first, the Gui Yuan Qi must be real. Secondly, you must obey all my arrangements from now on. Seemingly realizing that the second condition might be ambiguous, Songwen added, don't worry, I won't force you to do anything against your will. Upon hearing this, the older sister was overjoyed. Thank you, Senior, for taking us in. Thank you, Senior. She kept bowing and thanking him, tears welling up in her eyes as she spoke. Even the younger sister's numb expression now showed a flicker of light. How should I address you too? Songwen asked. The older sister hurriedly replied, my name is Tong and my sister's name is In. Songwen nodded. Get up, no need to kneel. Also, you should change your clothes. Tong wiped the tears from her face and reached for her sister, trying to stand up. When she heard Songwen tell them to change clothes, her expression turned bitter again. Senior, we only have these clothes, most of the time. Ping Guang wouldn't even allow us to wear them. Songwen paused for a moment, slightly stunned. Ping Guang certainly knew how to play his cards. He took out 2 sets of unused robes and tossed them over to them. Put these on for now. The 2 women received the clothes, turned around, and began to change behind their backs, the rustling sound of their movements filling the air. After a moment, they were dressed. The robes were a little large, but with their delicate features, the 2 women exuded a fragile beauty. Chapter 469. Where's the Gui Yuan Qi? Songwen asked, and Tong replied, does Senior have a sea chart? Songwen flipped his hand and took out a jade slip. After infusing his spiritual power into it, a virtual sea chart appeared in midair, and Tong pointed to the upper left corner of the chart, where there was nothing but sea. Here, there is an underwater reef island on the eastern side of the island. There is a tomb, and the Gui Yuan Qi is within the tomb. Songwen frowned slightly. An underwater reef island? If the island is below the water, how can we determine its location? And Tong said, surrounding the reef island within 100 miles are 3 smaller islands, and the reef island is in the center of these 3 islands. Songwen scanned the 3 small islands on the sea chart and nodded. How did your father know that there was a tomb on the underwater reef island? And Tong replied, before he passed, my father was invited by a friend to explore the tomb. In the end, he died from the evil Qi inside the tomb. Did your father ever tell you about the specifics of the tomb? Or did he have a map of it? Songwen asked, and Tong shook her head. No, when my father returned, he was already poisoned by the evil Qi, on the verge of death, and didn't mention anything about the tomb. Songwen couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed, however. It was then that In, who had been silent, spoke up. No, there was a rough sketch. I saw it when I was sorting through my father's belongings. And Tong looked at her younger sister in surprise, clearly unaware of this. Where is the rough sketch? Songwen asked. It was burned with my father's other belongings. And In replied, but I can remember it. Songwen took out paper and a brush from his storage ring. Draw it for me. And Tong took the paper and brush. Glancing at the empty cave dwelling, which had no table, she had no choice but to kneel and start drawing. It seemed that their father had not fully explored the entire tomb, as Tong's sketch was very simple, only containing a few strokes. It showed part of the tomb's passage and two side chambers on the left, but no information about the main chamber. Their father might not have entered the main chamber, or perhaps he was forced to retreat after encountering the Gui Yuan Qi inside. From the sketch, not much could be gathered, but Song Wen could roughly deduce that, for him, the tomb should not be dangerous. After all, a Foundation establishment cultivator had been able to approach the main chamber. How dangerous could it really be? Song Wen shot out a burst of spiritual power, shattering the sketch. "This matter must not be spoken of to anyone," Song Wen said coldly. "Rest assured, Senior, as long as you do not expel us, we do not intend to leave this island for the rest of our lives. This matter will not reach a fourth person." And Tong said, "That's good." Song Wen moved to a corner of the cave dwelling and took out the starry line formation array, carefully calculating the positions of the stars before beginning to set up the formation. 2 hours later, nightfall arrived suddenly. A dazzling silver beam of light shot up from the jade plate, speeding toward the sky. About a quarter of an hour later, the light gradually weakened, but it did not completely dissipate. It remained faintly visible in the sky. If outsiders saw this beam, they would know that this island was owned and would not dare to approach casually. "From today onward, you two will reside in this cave dwelling. You may take any birds, beasts, or spirit herbs from the island, or you can open up a spirit garden to cultivate your own. In any case, I will not interfere with your daily life or cultivation. However, you cannot leave the island freely." And Tong looked at Song Wen in surprise. She had never expected him to give them such a large amount of freedom and permission. "Senior, aren't you going to stay in this cave dwelling?" she asked. Song Wen replied, "I will establish another cave dwelling, but where it is, you do not need to know. The only thing you need to do is to guard the starry line formation. If anyone sends a message, you must notify me in time." Saying this, Song Wen tossed a communication jade slip to them, and Tong took the jade slip. "What if Senior is not on the island and cannot receive the message?" Song Wen replied, "Then you should send a message at regular intervals until I receive it." "Understood, Senior." Song Wen nodded and turned to leave the cave dwelling. He flew to the sky above the island, intending to find a suitable location to establish another cave dwelling. The cave dwelling on the cliff was too conspicuous. If one day they provoked a strong enemy, the enemy would be able to find the cave with a single glance. As for Tong and her sister, they could divert the enemy's attention and buy Song Wen some time to escape. After observing for a long time from high above, Song Wen dove into the sea. Since he planned to stay on this island for an extended period, he needed to understand it thoroughly. A quarter of an hour later, Song Wen surfaced from the water. He had found the perfect place for his new cave dwelling, the western side of the island, which was also the back of Tong and her sister's cave. The entrance to the cave was at the base of a cliff, hidden among the rocks where the waves crashed. Song Wen worked for 3 hours before finally carving out the cave. The entrance was small, just tall enough for one person. Cleverly concealed by the towering rocks and the crashing waves, the passage behind the entrance was narrow, sloping upwards. After a short distance, the space opened up into a wide, open area. This was a spacious cave with a diameter of about 1 mile. To avoid being trapped inside by enemies, Song Wen carved 2 additional exits in the cave. One sloped downward into the deep sea, while the other was a straight path leading up to the mountain's peak. Neither tunnel was fully opened. Each still had about 10 feet of rock left to be excavated. The cave was taking shape, and now Song Wen needed to connect it to the ley lines to increase the spiritual energy in the area. After carefully calculating the path of the ley lines, Song Wen took out 4 blue flags and a large copper mirror-like formation disc. He planned to set up the Spirit Pivot Phantom Vein formation. This was a level 4 formation, not particularly advanced, but capable of slightly altering the flow of the miniature ley line's energy. Ji'in Island was only a few dozen miles long, so the Spirit Pivot Phantom Vein formation was sufficient. Of course, Song Wen couldn't set up a complex large-scale formation. Song Wen had obtained the formation flags and disc while still at the Beastmaster sect. He had always thought this formation was quite useful, so he had kept it and never sold it. Suddenly, the entire Ji'in Island began to tremble lightly. The sand and stones on the ground shifted and the sea churned as if an invisible force was moving deep beneath the earth. Boom. A deep, long sound resonated from the depths of the earth. "What's happening?" And Een asked, her expression slightly panicked as she turned to her sister, and Tong shook her head, her brows furrowed with worry in her eyes. She and her sister had just received Song Wen's protection and they didn't want any further disturbances. The concentration of spiritual energy in the cave is rapidly decreasing, and Een exclaimed in surprise, and Tong suddenly had a thought and said it might be Senior's doing. And Een asked, what is Senior doing? Why doesn't he stay in the same cave as us? And Tong replied, don't try to guess Senior's intentions, we just need to obey his commands. For him to provide us with a place to live is already a tremendous opportunity for us. And Een sighed, I never expected there would be such kind-hearted seniors in the cultivation world. What the two sisters didn't notice was that, in a corner of the cave, a small insect was hiding in a crack, watching them intently. Chapter 470. As Songwen finished setting up the new cave dwelling, he received a message from a sacred gu which had been monitoring the island's edge. Ping Guang had arrived. As soon as Ping Guang stepped onto the island, Songwen stopped him. Senior, my two maidservants didn't go to the island I designated. I wonder if they are still on your island? Songwen replied, I found them to be quite clever, so I decided to keep them here. Young friend Peng wouldn't have any objections, would you? Peng Guang hurriedly replied, how could I dare to object? It is an honor for them to be favored by Senior. Songwen smiled, a gentleman does not take what belongs to others. Name your price and I will buy them from you. As he spoke, a pile of spirit stones floated in front of him as if he was truly waiting for Ping Guang to set a price. Ping Guang quickly responded, Senior, you are too kind. How could I accept your spirit stones? Songwen smiled faintly, the other party was quite smart. Since that's the case, I won't force the matter. Ping Guang looked at the pile of spirit stones in front of Songwen and suddenly they vanished. He froze for a moment. He laughed awkwardly, thank you, Senior, for understanding. Songwen replied, I've already sent them a message, they will be over shortly, you can remove the restrictions on them. Ping Guang cupped his fists and bowed, yes, Senior. When he straightened up and looked up, Songwen had already disappeared without a trace. Ping Guang's expression became slightly disappointed, as if he had something he wanted to ask but didn't have the chance. 2 days later, Songwen arrived at the reef island where the tomb was located. The reef island was submerged several miles below the sea's surface. If it weren't for a special search, one could easily miss its existence. The island's top was about 10 miles wide, strangely flat, as if it had been intentionally cut off. Songwen summoned the silver corpse, which moved ahead while he followed behind. The two kept a distance of about 1 mile as they dived deeper into the sea. As they went deeper, the light began to fade, until everything was swallowed by pitch darkness. Soon, they had descended over 40 miles and the immense water pressure from all directions pressed against Song Wen's body. Song Wen's physical strength was immense and the water pressure couldn't cause him any harm. However, he still summoned a protective magical shield just in case. The deeper they went, the more the area of the reef island seemed to expand. At this point, the island had transformed in Song Wen's eyes into a colossal stone mountain, towering amid the vast ocean. Suddenly, ahead of the silver corpse, a deep cave entrance appeared. Songwen approached the side of the cave and observed for a long time. There seemed to be no abnormalities inside, and no large sea monsters were nearby. He summoned the Ghost King, instructing the silver corpse to lead the way while the Ghost King took the rear, and he positioned himself in the center. Together, they entered the cave. After traveling several hundred feet, the cave suddenly came to an abrupt halt, blocked by numerous fallen rocks. Songwen furrowed his brow, beginning to doubt whether the information Tong and her sister provided was accurate. After thinking for a moment, Songwen did not retreat. Instead, he used his magical powers to move the stones away from the cave. Perseverance paid off. Songwen spent about half an hour and finally cleared a passage through the cave that stretched over 10 miles. Before him appeared a giant stone door, several feet tall. The stone door was half open, and faint traces of corpse chi spilled out, drifting with the seawater. The silver corpse passed through the door and confirmed that there was no danger behind it, allowing Songwen to enter. Behind the stone door was a long, dimly lit tomb passage about 2 meters wide and 1 meter high, made from square blue stones. Along the passage, scattered metal pieces lay about. Songwen focused his eyes and realized that these metals were all man-made and appeared to be parts that had fallen off from puppets. This meant that the tomb had originally been guarded by puppets, but they had been destroyed. After walking another mile down the passage, Songwen discovered 2 smaller tomb rooms on either side. These two Rooms weren't large, only several dozen feet in area, and seemed to have been emptied by someone. There was nothing left inside. After continuing for another mile, a stone door appeared ahead. The stone door was tightly closed. It seems perfectly aligned. Songwon flicked his finger, and a weak surge of magical power shot out. This power landed directly on the stone door, causing it to slightly tremble. This showed that there were no defensive formations or restrictions on the door. Songwon stared at the stone door, falling into deep thought as he had traveled along the corridor. Aside from the faint corpse chi in the air, he had not found any signs of deadly aura. This meant he had not yet reached the location where Ntong's father encountered the deadly energy. Ntong's father must have entered the stone door in front of him. However, the stone door was now tightly shut. And combined with the blocked cave they had encountered earlier, this seemed somewhat unusual. After encountering the deadly energy, Ntong's father had likely retreated. When someone is fleeing for their life, would they still be thoughtful enough to close the tomb's door behind them? It seemed that after Ntong's father fled, something or someone within the tomb must have closed the stone door and sealed the cave. Under Songwen's control, the silver corpse stepped up to the stone door. Songwen and the Ghost King retreated a mile behind. After Songwen gathered 3 thunder spears, the silver corpse placed its hands on the stone door and pushed with all its strength. The heavy stone door slowly creaked open, and the sea water in the tomb stirred slightly. 8 black figures rushed out from behind the door. Boom. The figure at the front was immediately slapped back by the silver corpse. The other 7 figures took the opportunity to close in and began fighting the silver corpse. Songwen did not rush to intervene, judging from their appearance. The 8 black figures were copper corpses, likely at the late second stage of strength. Although they were outnumbering the silver corpse 8-1, they were still no match for it. However, these copper corpses were a bit special. While the silver corpse could easily push them back, it did not cause much damage to them. The bodies of these copper corpses were far stronger than typical copper corpses. In the pitch-black tomb, Songwen's eyes suddenly brightened. He sensed a unique aura emanating from these copper corpses, different from the usual corpse chi. It was the Gui Yuan chi. These copper corpses were either created with Gui Yuan chi when they were made into zombies, or they had been exposed to it for an extended period, causing them to accumulate a certain amount of Gui Yuan chi in their bodies. The thick and chaotic Gui Yuan chi made their physical bodies far stronger than normal copper corpses. Songwen speculated that the latter was more likely. No one would willingly integrate Gui Yuan chi into copper corpses when creating them. That would be a waste of resources. The Gui Yuan chi inside the copper corpses had already been absorbed and refined, so extracting it would be extremely difficult and require a significant cost far outweighing the value of the Gui Yuan chi within them. Therefore, these copper corpses posed no threat to Songwen. 3 thunder spears shot out in a triangular formation, striking the chests of 3 copper corpses. The lightning in the dark sea water flashed, and the 3 copper corpses immediately exploded, their limbs and rotten flesh scattering everywhere. Following the same method, the remaining 5 copper corpses were soon dealt with. Although the Gui Yuan chi was powerful, it was still suppressed by Songwen's thunder magic. Furthermore, the amount of Gui Yuan chi in the copper corpses was not much, so it was easily overwhelmed by the thunder spears. After confirming that there were no further threats behind the door, Songwen stepped through the stone door. Beyond the door was a vast tomb chamber, likely the main burial chamber. The chamber was at least a square mile, with intricate carvings on the ground, walls, and ceiling, depicting beautiful murals. However, these murals had been carved into ordinary blue stones and were severely eroded by the sea water. At the center of the tomb chamber stood a stone platform about 3 yards high. On the stone platform was a black corpse coffin, approximately a yard long. A faint Gui Yuan chi flowed around the coffin.